That's not what I was expecting, actually. I guess a road makes sense, but it's not visually the same thing that I was expecting to see.
In Petscop 1 and 13, we see a similar arch over a road that Paul walks through. It got me thinking about parallel universes within Petscop, being that Petscop uses the idea of worlds and events overlaid on top of each other to create a deeper story. So I got measuring the distance of the road to see if there was any correlation and if new information could be extracted from the data. Maybe I could find the house. Maybe the top-down view would overlay these areas on top of each other. Who knows? So how would I measure the distance of the road? Well, like I did in tracking Marvin 1 and 2, I would measure the speed at which Paul walked, determined by how many grids he traversed in one step. Then I would count the steps and multiply them by the grids per step modifier, giving an accurate distance of the road that I can make into a map. First, I would need a grid that works with both the original house and the outside of Evencare, so as to make a uniform grids per step modifier and an accurate end map. I would use the door of the house as the ruler for the vertical width of the grids. Then I'd use Paul's walk speed, which we know from previous videos to be 1.2 grids per step, as a ruler for the horizontal width. In both Petscop 1 and 14, it takes Paul exactly 12 steps to reach the house and Evencare respectively. So 12 times 1.2 is 14.4, rounding it to 14, it looks like this. I know what some of you may be thinking. Why would you need a grid if you already know the speed at which Paul runs? Enter the bucket. If you overlay the footage of Petscop 1 and 13 and try to match up the arches with each other, you can see that Paul, while pushing the bucket, runs a bit slower than Paul without the bucket. So we need this grid not to calculate the distance to the house, but to see how many grids the road consists of. This way we can make a ruler and measure how fast Paul runs with the bucket, as this is the only footage of Paul we have traversing the entire road. Using this ruler, we see that Paul runs at 0.9 grids per step on average when pushing the bucket, a slowdown of 25%. So in the end, after counting the steps Paul takes, the data we have is this. In all, Paul takes 26 steps to the right starting from the arch outside of Evencare. It takes him 12 steps to get to the front of Evencare, and 14 more to reach the full extent of his run to the right. Paul runs at 1.2 grids per step, which places the entrance of Evencare at 14.4 grids to the right of the arch entrance. The end of his run at 1.2 grids per step is 31.8 grids to the right of the arch entrance. As for the extent of the road from the house to the arch, Paul takes 82 steps at 0.9 grids per step. That's 73.8 grids traversed, which puts the house here. Now I'm not sure if this has any lasting significance, but the more we know, the more we can discount as fluff, or use in the future. Also, remember back to the start of the video.
That's not what I was expecting, actually. I guess a road makes sense, but it's not visually the same thing that I was expecting to see.
If Paul didn't expect to see the road, but still expected it to be something like a road, then, if the two arches and the similar steps to the entrances are any correlation, the road he probably expected visually was probably the one outside of Evencare. So when Paul starts Petscop 11 by saying,
Signs along the way.
the signs along the way he used to make the map to the tyre may refer to something he found outside of Evencare, rather than on the Newmaker plane.